I was lying on our bed when I heard the garage door go off. Damn, I exclaimed. Jumping to my feet, I glanced at the clock. 10:45. No, she couldn't be home yet. Oh, crap. I looked at our bedroom, rose petals and champagne, and thought about how my whole life was about to come crashing down around me. I'm an architect, and I've been on my own for about a year now. I was working incredibly hard because I only had one client, and my staff consisted of me, and me. My office was in an abandoned gas station. I tried to set up an office at home, but found that I was taking breaks too often to be with Judy and the girls. We had identical twin girls who were born 9 weeks before I graduated from the University of Texas 6 years ago. Their birth was not planned, but we were very excited. We both wanted to have a big family, but something went wrong during labor, and she was no longer able to get pregnant. We tried several fertility treatments, but although the doctors were confident that some of the newer techniques would be successful, we decided to postpone them because of the expense when I started living on my own. Judy stayed home with the girls until I opened my office. Money was tight, and we needed the extra income. So, without complaining, she started working for an oil company as an assistant manager. Judy thought she had the perfect schedule for a working mother. Monday through Thursday, she got to work no earlier than 9 o'clock and left at 3. Perfect hours, except for Friday, when she needed to be at the airport for a 7:10 a.m. flight to Dallas to attend her boss's weekly meetings. The airport was a 20-minute drive from our house, or 30 if you drove the speed limit. It was a long day because they didn't fly out of Dallas until 6:25, and Judy rarely walked in the door before 8:15. Then, almost 4 months ago, things got much worse. Judy's boss got a promotion, and meetings started to drag on. After they missed several planes and had to pay extra, they started just scheduling the last flight, which didn't arrive in Midland until 9:55. Typically, Judy would get home closer to 11. I wasn't happy about this, but since Judy didn't complain, I kept silent. Tonight was supposed to be a lot of fun. And now it looked like it was going to be ruined. I looked at the clock again. 10:45. No, she can't be home. I heard her car pull into the garage. Why was she coming home now, at a time when she should have been boarding if the plane had landed on time? But I knew the plane wouldn't land on time because, oddly enough, I had checked the flight. I wanted everything to be perfectly timed for the moment she walked through the door. In a disoriented haze, I looked around the room once more. I saw the vase of rose petals I planned to scatter on the bedspread, the champagne in the ice bucket I'd rented from the liquor store. I remembered the apple pie with caramelized pecans I bought at H-E-B. The frozen pie took an hour to make, and I only put it in the oven a half hour ago. I also bought 1905 vanilla ice cream from the H-E-B store for the filling. Hot apple pie with ice cream is Judy's favorite dessert, and this was one of the few dishes I could make. For a few precious seconds, I lamented that she had ruined my surprise for her. This was a big day for us. Today, I found out that the first house I designed won the Frank Lloyd Wright Award. For an architect, that's like winning the Nobel Prize. I thought about announcing the award at a family dinner, but decided I wanted to announce it to Judy in private, to make it the start of a romantic weekend. With the kind of business the prize would bring in, we would be able to afford the best of everything. I hoped Judy would be thrilled. So the twins were with my parents on one of their weekend RV trips to sightsee. I told them I would have big news when we all went out to dinner Sunday night. I heard the garage door close, but Judy wasn't due to show up yet. My long-discarded suspicions lined up and began a vicious attack on my head and heart. My intuition told me she was having an affair, but my heart continued to deny it. What do I really know? I asked myself. Her recent habit of going straight to the hot tub when she got home on Friday started around the time the late flights came in. Since the late flight started, we never make love on Fridays when she gets home. She's too tired after work. But before the advent of late flights, when she arrived just a couple hours early, she would practically pounce on me when she got home from Dallas. If I hadn't been so pleasantly shocked, I would have asked her about it. After she started staying late at work, that never happened again. She was still just as responsive when I wanted to fool around, but never on Fridays. Of course, that makes sense after an 18-hour workday, but her chatter about work changed too. So has our social life. When she first started working, we would often go to little get-togethers with her coworkers, and she would rave about how great her boss was. I remember being jealous when I kept hearing about his incredible business acumen, or when I listened to her talk about his resemblance to Sean Connery, in his prime, of course. Then, about 3 or 4 months ago, she stopped talking about him and we stopped seeing her coworkers. I remember breathing a sigh of relief, because my own hectic schedule had left me too exhausted to enjoy evenings out. Now I was sure she had changed for a more sinister reason. As the reasons continued to surface, the most horrifying one of all surfaced. I couldn't remember the last time she had confessed her love to me, when she had last lovingly pecked me on the cheek or hugged me without asking. Judy had always been a demonstrative woman, and now she wasn't. At least not with me. I froze on the half-word. I wanted to scream my denial. The thought threatened to overwhelm me. Then she called out, "Matt, where are you? I'm so glad to be home!" Her voice sounded so normal. It was just that her tone didn't match the mental image I had created. I shook my head. It couldn't be. This wasn't my Judy. Maybe I was looking at the wrong flight. Or maybe the plane had somehow made up for the time. In 3 steps, I was at the computer in our bedroom. I hit the exit button, and the splash screen disappeared. I hit the refresh button. Her flight number popped up on the screen, labeled. It was still half an hour until we landed. I looked back at our bed, crumpled by what I was lying on, and for a second I wanted to run away. I wanted to go back to the land of denial, but I wasn't made for that. The question was open, and I had to have an answer to it. As I walked down the stairs, I knew I wasn't speaking, but I could feel the guttural sound building up in my throat. I walked up behind her and enclosed her in a tight bear hug. "Matt, please, you know how tired I get when I get back. Let me relax until tomorrow." "No, Matt. Maybe later. No, Matt." Wriggling furiously, with surprising strength, she broke free and screamed, "Damn it! I said no!" She stood panting with effort and looked up at me. I moved towards her, my intention clear. Her eyes got really big, and she said in a quiet voice that stopped me dead in my tracks, "No, Matt, you're not. I'm not going to let you find out that way." I don't think I realized what I was doing until that second. Those 13 words threw me off like a bull at a slaughterhouse. I was in as much medical shock as if she had shot me. I looked at her and I felt nothing. I couldn't understand it. I knew my world had just been shattered, but I felt nothing. I was unusually calm. I tried to feel something, anything at all, but there was nothing. In a voice so calm that I could hardly believe it was mine, I said, "You wouldn't have done this to us if you didn't love him. Did you ever love me?" Her face became tender. "I loved you. I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want this. I never wanted it to happen. I never thought it would be like this. I didn't want to hear anymore. I interrupted her. "Are you going to marry him?" There was a tense silence. I stared at her silently, demanding an answer. She bit her lower lip. That question was coming up. It was pushing me to decide. I was so confused, I just couldn't. I interrupted her again. "Please do me the courtesy of going back to him. I just figured out the whole sneaky affair because your flight hasn't landed yet. I need to be alone to think things through." Judy moved toward me with a face full of compassion, intending to enclose me in her arms. "Oh, Matt, I'm so sorry. I wish this had never started. Please let me explain to you. I'm so sorry you found out this way." I stepped back, feeling like I was made of the most fragile crystal, knowing that at the slightest touch from her, I would shatter, irrevocably. I took another step back, extending my arm to stop her. "Please, just take what you need and leave. Mom and Dad took the girls on one of their outings. They won't be in touch until Sunday evening. We'll talk Sunday afternoon." I don't want to see or hear from you before then." I shuddered. Some part of my brain was wondering if it was rage, fear, or a heart attack. She looked at me with pleading eyes, opened her mouth to speak, and I interrupted her with a firm, "No." Fear flashed across her face. She sighed and walked away to our bedroom. The days returned. I went to the living room, sat down heavily in my chair, and wondered how long the gray void in my mind would last. I have no idea how much time passed before she returned. The look on her face was wistful, but also the kind I'd only seen when she'd been told she could never have another child. "Matt, I saw what you were planning. I didn't want to mess it up. If you wanted to..." Those words sounded like a stroke of thunder to me. That bitch. She was offering me entertainment out of mercy. I started to get up from the chair. She saw my face, cried, and ran away. She must have been in the car for a long time because it was several minutes before I heard the garage door open and then close. As soon as I heard the clang of the garage door closing, I leaned back in my chair and a colorless emptiness descended on me again. I don't know how long I sat like that, immersed in a perfect Zen void, before I fell asleep. I woke up furious from a vivid dream in which Judy was doing it with her boss. Every part of my body groaned as I rose from the chair, every joint screaming its insult, yet I was blazing with an anger I had never felt before. I stomped back to our bedroom. Our bedroom. There was no more us. There could be no more us. In a red haze, I grabbed a bottle of champagne from the fridge and smashed everything I could smash until I was over the graceful Dresden figure of a young woman in 100 little fur coats, covered by a pale blue ball gown and holding a fawn in her arms. It was Judy's only inheritance from her grandmother. As much as I wanted to smash that 6-inch tall porcelain doll, I just couldn't. I looked around the room. I had destroyed it, but it didn't make me feel any better. I looked at the champagne bottle in my hand and marveled that it hadn't broken. Without thinking, I ripped off the wrapper, unscrewed the cork, and pulled it open with a loud pop. Bubbles popped out, just like in the movies. I was never a wine snob, but as a kid, I once read a biography of the Rothschild family. I promised myself that if I ever went big, I would celebrate with one of the most expensive champagnes in the world, Chateau Lafite Rothschild Pauillac. I sipped straight from the heavy glass bottle and swore I would never touch that drink again. It tasted like shit. It didn't put me to sleep, but being tired helped, and I fell back asleep. There were no dreams, thank God. I woke up a few hours later when the first light came through the window. The rage I had felt was gone, and my mind sank into a daze. Inside, I was dead. I tried to summon anger, then sadness, but nothing worked. My marriage was over, I realized that, but my mind refused to accept reality. Instead, it looked to the past for answers. Judy and I met when I was a student at the University of Texas. She attended Southwestern University in Georgetown and played soccer on a Division III team. I played club soccer at UT and got a group together to participate in a soccer tournament that was held on the SU fields. Judy came to watch and caught my eye. I made a complete ass of myself trying to show off. We didn't even come out ahead in a tournament we had won the year before and should have won the year after. Judy, bless her heart, pretended not to notice. From that day on, we were inseparable. Driving 26.8 miles up and down I-35, we burned enough gasoline for a strategic reserve, but who cared? I realized Judy and I were destined to be married when I lost count of how many times we had fun. It was in a beautiful Four Seasons hotel room near the airport after Tri-Delt Spring Formal on Friday night. But the funny thing is, we didn't do it on Friday night. Judy freaked out. She said she couldn't without having a permanent commitment. So I got down on one knee and asked Judy to marry me. She agreed, but she still wanted the ring. I spent the night on the floor. We were at Americus Diamond by the Highland Mall as soon as the doors opened, and I bought a ring that I thought she would always wear with pride. Back in the room, we exchanged private vows before God as I placed the ring on her finger. We were married during the following Christmas vacation. We lived in Round Rock and both graduated a year later. I wasn't inattentive either. Even with all the extra hours I worked, she never once said a word about being homesick or needing more of my time. You've heard the expression, I worshipped the ground she walked on. In my case, it was true. When we built this house, I drove down to Georgetown and picked up a plug of grass from their soccer field. It was from the very spot where I first saw it. I bought enough sod with the same grass to make our yard, but that little sprout was the first thing I planted. No, our sex life was the stuff of dreams. And our family life? I pressed my lips together, unable to find answers in our past. Making myself a cup of twinning Chinese black tea, I tried again to conjure up some emotion, at least pain. But still it felt nothing. I could generate fake feelings, but real emotions of any kind were beyond me. I think my subconscious realized that I couldn't handle the pain yet, and I didn't have the strength for the rage I used to feel. Besides, I needed to be unemotional if I was going to salvage anything from the quagmire Judy had thrown me into. I'd realized our marriage was over as soon as I found out she was cheating on me. Destroying the bedroom last night, I knew I wanted to hurt her, to punish her. In the morning, I was surprised to find that I had gone through everything in her closet. I had ripped to shreds all of her underwear and everything else in her closet. I didn't even realize I had pulled a fish-cutting knife out of my tackle box until I saw it on the floor by the bed. That realization triggered memories of a childhood friend and left me horrified. Desperate not to resurrect that horrible memory, I began to go over everything I knew about Judy's infidelity. First, she said she had thought about marrying him. I wondered why that thought didn't hurt me. My mind shunned even the image of a fully clothed Judy in this man's arms, but the thought that she might marry him didn't bother me in the slightest. I explored that line a little further with the same unnatural detachment. I felt with every fiber of my being that Judy still loved me. I was sure that if I pushed, I could win her back. I knew all her leverage. I had the advantage of the twins and her own moral code. I knew how guilty she must feel, and to be honest, how easy Judy was to manipulate. Then I thought about the man who had entertained her. I knew quite a bit about her boss, James Capote. He was in his early 40s, had been divorced from his second wife for over 5 years, and had 2 children, a boy about to graduate from Midland Lee High School and a daughter 2 years behind him. He kept trying to increase his time with them, Judy said, but he was only with them every other weekend and alternating holidays. He didn't even get them in the summer. I met with him many times shortly after Judy started working, but for the last 3 or 4 months I haven't met him at all. I didn't like him from the beginning. He had wandering eyes. And while I could understand that he was pursuing Judy, I found it hard to believe that Judy could actually fall in love with him. These thoughts tempted me to go down the what if or what did I do wrong memory lane. Instead, I went to my computer and began researching divorce laws in Texas. I discovered that a divorce in Texas can be final as early as 60 days after filing. The judgment must be read in open court, but the parties do not even have to be present if it is not contested. The sooner it's over, the better, I thought. And there were forms available to print out for a fee, and I was happy to pay. I spent several hours thinking about what I wanted out of the settlement agreement and how I could get Judy to agree to my terms. In the end, I decided that I wanted what was best for my girls. I thought about calling and canceling our credit cards, emptying our bank accounts, but decided that as much as I hated Judy now, I didn't think she would try to steal from me or our girls. I needed a house so the girls wouldn't have to move. We borrowed every last penny to help me start the business, which was only about $10,000. With the premium, I could borrow as much as I needed to buy Judy out. With the premium, my business would be worth a fortune. I didn't want her, or more importantly, that asshole Capote to have any claim. That was another reason to make it quick. The award won't be made public until the big banquet 3 months from now. The winners wouldn't be announced until then, but it wasn't like the Academy Awards where the winner was sometimes known in advance. I'd been warned, since I didn't normally plan to attend the ceremony in New York. Hell, if I didn't win the prize, I wouldn't be able to get a ticket. Yeah, that was another great reason to get things done quickly, which meant I had to ensure a fair division if I wanted it. I was torn between wanting to remove anything that hinted at our life together and wanting to make as few changes as possible for the girls. I decided that I would get an appraiser to appraise everything we had, including the things I destroyed. I would offer to buy things in return, in addition to her half of our possessions. We would alternately pick what we wanted until someone reached half of the total value. I listed the rest of the details of how to destroy our relationship, making notes and specifics on the forms I bought. By late afternoon, I thought I had a plan that I could live with and that Judy would readily accept. I realized that I hadn't eaten anything all day, and the mere thought of food made my stomach churn. Still, if I was going to accomplish my goals, I needed strength. Not trusting my culinary abilities, I wondered what food would best fit the slice of our life together. I ordered a pizza. As I ate, my thoughts returned to what I could do to hurt Judy, to make her suffer. I knew that once I got past the denial stage, the emotional pain would become unbearable. But how could I make her feel that pain too? Leaving me wouldn't hurt her, not like it would hurt me. Sure, there would be regrets, but she was leaving me for someone. I would be alone. I couldn't do anything that would break her heart. And yet, no matter how much I denied it, no matter how unacceptable what she did was, I didn't think I could stop loving her. After much internal debate and reasoning, I realized it wasn't my choice to keep her or send her away. She made that choice when she accepted Capote into her body. The fact that my wife did that was something I would not accept. Period. If I wasn't the one who decided whether she stayed or left, what could I hope for in the worst-case scenario? And then the perfect solution occurred to me. I was still asking myself if I could realize it. Judy had always given in to my wishes. It pissed me off that I could never get her to tell me where she wanted to go for dinner. She could then pout about my choices, but refused to give me her opinion unless I made a big deal out of it. And could I use this to push her to do what I wanted her to do? In the end, it would be her choice. But I knew I had every chance. I knew her. Maybe not as well as I should have, but I knew how much pressure she reacted to, and I knew I could apply a lot of pressure. Until late into the night, I made plans. It was going to work out very subtly. Judy called a little after 8 o'clock. I took a few deep breaths before answering. Judy, you made your choice. Even if you didn't want it, you made the choice for both of us. Now the question is how it will affect the girls. You know that divorce is always hard on children, especially at the girls' age. The question is, do you want a war, or will we work on making it as easy as possible for them? Matt, please let me talk. I'm sorry I hurt you. I love you. I don't want you to hate me. I didn't expect it to go this far, but I was almost speechless when I heard the word love. Judy, every time I hear your voice, I start to hate you and what you did even more. Do you realize how this pathetic affair will affect the twins? We're trying to raise them with values and morals. How are we going to explain you throwing away the most solemn vows a man can take for the sake of leisure entertainment? Judy sobbed. It wasn't like that. Oh, really? Even after months, you still haven't decided to marry him. How will that sound to the girls? I paused and let the silence linger, then continued. I'm sorry. I was able to contact the family and tell them to plan to keep the girls a little later. If you agree, I'll bring them here at 5 and we can break the news to them together. Otherwise, I'll tell them alone. I'll be polite to you while we talk to the girls, but this is the last time I want to hear your voice until we divorce. I'm trying very hard not to say what I feel like saying. You will always be the mother of my children, and we will have to talk about them. Just don't push me right now. Matt, I really didn't mean to hurt you. It's just... Yeah, I know. It just happened. Let's do this as soon as possible. I'll pay your rent. Just hope you're not going to live with your douche until you get married. That would really turn them on. I paused and let my pulse slow. I'd like to keep as much of this sordid story from them as possible. It's up to you, you'll decide. Can I come over right now and talk? No. Please, Matt, I don't want it to be like this. I interrupted her. I said in my most determined voice, "Our marriage was over the second you spread your legs in front of him." I sighed dramatically. "Whatever your reasons, you ruined him. So let's just bury him as honorably as we can." I paused for emphasis, then said in a wistful tone, "I really hope you marry him. Not only for the girl's sake, but it will be easier for me. I don't want to think that you ruined our marriage just for your own amusement." There was silence. Finally, Judy swallowed and said, "Okay, Matt. If that's what you want, I'll do it your way." Next chapter. If there's a hell, I've been there. The detachment remained. Otherwise, I think I would have died from the pain I saw in my little girls when Judy started a conversation along the lines of, "You should know that Daddy and I love you very much, but sometimes adults make mistakes." She continued for several minutes, using euphemisms that the girls didn't understand. Finally, I said as gently as possible, "Your mom fell in love with another man and now wants to marry him. I authorized it, so we'll have to divorce." As soon as the words escaped my lips, I realized that I would have done anything not to say them. The Omar Khayyam poem I had learned in school ricocheted through my brain, and I had to hold back tears. The nimble finger writes, and having written, hash, he goes on, neither piety nor wit hash. Will lure him back to undo half a line, nor tears wash away a word. Nothing has changed in the 10 centuries since he wrote it. My entire universe consisted of their two precious faces. I couldn't even see the rest of their bodies, just two little masks of pain. I wasn't much older than they were when a friend's father from my soccer team killed his mother and then killed himself right in their living room. His little sister and my friend hid in their room while their parents screamed at each other. The only thing he remembered hearing before the shots were fired was his father yelling, "I'd rather they had dead parents than parents like that." There was a terrible custody battle between his grandparents and his mom's parents, who lived in another state, won. I never saw him again, but in that moment, I understood how his dad felt. It took all my willpower not to pull out my gun and kill Judy. I had never hated anyone so much in my entire life. I thought I had, but until I saw what it was doing to my daughters, I had no idea what real hate was. I know other things were said. The girls asked questions, and Judy must have answered them. I didn't hear a sound. All I knew was that I was holding two little treasures. Finally, the question reached me. "But Mommy, why don't you love Daddy anymore?" I blinked, and color came back into the world. I saw a creature, but it couldn't be human. No human could bear the pain written on a body like Judy's. Its face was contorted with pain and tried to radiate love for my daughters. "Mommy still loves Daddy. She will always love Daddy." I interjected. "You won't realize it until you're older, but Mommy had to choose and she chose him. Sometimes people love more than one person, but you can only marry one. Mommy has to be married to Mr. Capote, but we will all try to make it as easy as possible for you. Mr. Capote will love you very much, but I will always be your daddy. You'll just have an extra person to love you, just like your mommy." Carrie, always the more demonstrative of the twins, broke out of my arms, lunged at her mother, and began hitting Judy with all her might. Lori followed suit a few seconds later, but took a long brass kaleidoscope from the coffee table. I grabbed Lori back, but made no attempt to help Judy. Instead, I said in a voice that sounded unnaturally cold, "You've upset the girls. I think you'd better leave. I'll let the captain know when you can get your things." After a few minutes, both girls had their arms wrapped around me and were crying. Judy started to open her mouth, but I interrupted her. "You're staying with the captain, aren't you? Or do you want the girls to only call you on your cell phone?" The washing had taken the makeup off her face and her eye was puffy, but her voice was calm as she answered, "That's where I spent the last 2 nights. I haven't said anything yet. I was hoping we'd talk to him as a family." I interrupted her again. "Girls, please go to your room. Mom and I need to talk alone for a few minutes." As soon as they left, I said, "As much as I admire and love the captain, he is your father, and I think you need to talk to him alone. Besides, I'm sure you'll want to start planning a wedding. I took a deep breath. I have a packet of legal documents I've prepared. I'd like you to take them with you. It's my plan to divide our assets and settle our affairs. Pardon my poor choice of words. I will agree to almost anything you want, except custody of the girl and your use of my name. I will concede if you marry Capote as soon as everything is settled, it will help keep what happened from the girls. But either way, I want it over in the minimum amount of time, which is 60 days from Monday. I was kind of at a loss for words a minute ago, but if you agree, we can meet with our lawyer in the morning and make arrangements. I'm sure your boss will give you the day off, and I want the papers filed by tomorrow night. If we can get this done, I promise to do everything I can to help your relationship with the girls. I will never tell them, or the captain, or anyone else that you are a lying, cheating whore who ruined our happy home. Judy looked like she wanted to cut the conversation short, but the tears finally began to drip. Without a word, she turned and quietly walked out the door. When I finally tucked the girls in for the night, I settled into my chair. Laying my head on my hands, I whispered, "Captain, oh shit, this is going to kill him. I'm so sorry this happened to him. He doesn't deserve this." Judy's father had retired with the rank of admiral, although he had never served in that rank and refused it. His last ship was one of the super aircraft carriers. As a result of a bad landing while sitting in the back seat with a rookie pilot, he was paralyzed from the waist down. Although I never considered him crippled, he lived in a wheelchair and urinated through a tube. Judy, a very late first child, was born shortly before the accident. Judy's mother passed away from cancer when Judy was still in junior high school, and the captain raised her alone. I have never met a finer man. He was as much of a father to me as my own, even more so. No, that's not fair. My father was a good father. It's just that he worked all his life as a petroleum engineer and geologist. He was away from home more often than not, and while he did his best, we were never close. It was different with the captain. I always said I could never leave Judy unless the captain left her too. He was the first man I admired who treated me like a man, not a child. When we married, Judy and I still had almost a year and a half of school left. Even I realized I was a little immature for marriage, but the captain brought out the best in me. Locked in a wheelchair, he was still the most intimidating man I'd ever met, and I could probably go on for days about my feelings for him and the impact he'd had on my life. I took a deep breath, looked at my watch, and took a second to try to convince myself that it was too late to call him. He answered on the second ring. "Son, first of all, let me say that I'm on your side. She's my daughter and I love her, but I can't believe she did something so stupid. I know she's confused, but..." We talked for a long time. He talked about the problems he'd encountered in the Navy, wives cheating when their husbands were gone for 6 months or even a year. He never said that some of them lived happily ever after, but I understood what he was getting at. As much as I wanted to, I respected him too much to interrupt him. Finally, he got to the point. "I read your papers. Is there any chance that if I beat that stupid bitch to a pulp, you'd consider giving her another chance?" I had to smile at the captain's hyperbole. He and I had discussed the problem of trying to spank our girls many times. We both thought that a gentle spanking of a small child was more effective than trying to educate an immature brain, but neither of us were very good at it. I felt a chill in my chest and worried that I might have a heart problem. "No, sir. Captain, I'm sorry, but this wasn't a one-time mistake. I never understood how a man could destroy his wife, but I do now. I will spend the rest of my life trying to forgive her, but even if I could, I still wouldn't be able to live with her." I sighed. I hated to hear those words, especially out of my own mouth, but I couldn't go ambiguous with the captain. "Besides, sir, even if I could, we've talked and she loves him. I can't live with that, not even for the girls." The captain's voice became very soft. "Son, she's not herself right now, but if you give her time..." She said they were talking about marriage. I didn't even know what was going on, and they were talking about marriage. I know I've been working long hours, but I just can't justify it. I want her to marry to a guy, and we'll both live with that. I already told her I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Captain, our marriage is dead. But I think it's best if the twins don't grow up thinking their mother abandoned our marriage for a cheap fling. There was a long pause. She didn't tell me that. Son, are you sure this is what you want to do? You want to push her into this marriage? I made my voice as firm as I could. Judy and I will always be twins. Right now, I have absolutely no respect for her. If she marries, at least try to do the honorable thing. Who knows, maybe in a few years we'll both be able to look at it differently. The captain interjected. If she marries him, it will be bad, and it will complicate our relationship, yours and mine, terribly. You will always be a grandfather to the girls, and I will always be their father. I'll let you decide how much that suits you, but I will never give up what you and I have. I heard the captain sigh. Then he said, It's cruel, but we'll do it your way. She's made her bed. I guess we'll have to see how much she likes it. But you know how I feel about you, and you know I don't think two wrongs make a right. I don't know how many times I've heard this or that variation of the expression, callous heart. Throughout our conversation, I felt like I was morphing. I couldn't quite hear the voice in my head, but I knew I was crossing the line that was turning my heart into hardened steel. I know, sir, but I have no choice. I can't take her back now and look at myself in the mirror. As much as I love Judy, I won't be a weak husband. Even if I said yes, what kind of example would that set for my girls? Judy broke our marriage bond. The sooner we make it legal, the better. The sooner we get past this, the sooner the future will work out. If I didn't know the captain, I might have thought I could hear tears in his voice. Son, I'm going to convince her to take you up on your offer to get things settled tomorrow. Just promise me that you and I can continue to communicate, that you won't shut me out, no matter how bad I feel. Please promise me that. His voice broke off. My own voice was a little hoarse when I said, You have my word, sir. There was a heavy silence, and I heard the captain mutter something that might have been a farewell. I didn't trust my voice to say even that. I knew his pain was stronger than mine. He loved us both. I hung up the phone, and as hard as I tried, I had no tears. I really disliked myself and hated Judy for making me this way. 3 months later, I sat alone at a table in the back of the huge auditorium. As I stepped forward to receive my prize, it was announced that I had become the youngest person ever to receive the award. At 28, I was 7 years younger than the previous youngest. I stood up, made my speech, and tried to keep the ash in my mouth from being too conspicuous. Still, it was impossible not to think back to the days after I knew I was the winner. The captain came to the lawyer's office that Monday morning, and every time Judy started to balk at one of the terms, he'd bend her over to a good compromise. We were done before noon, and the papers were filed before the court closed. 61 days later, the judge read the order in open court and we were divorced. A week after that, Judy became Mrs. James Capote. It was painful, and the girls cried all week while their honeymoon lasted. As I flew home, I realized for the first time what I had lost. I was the most beautiful architect on the planet. Clients were begging for my fee. And yet here I was, alone on an airplane. I had girlfriends, parents, but even though I'd killed a mastodon, I had no mate to bring the prize to. When I got home, my service was flooded with calls from potential clients. The only call I answered was from the captain. He said whatever he needed to say to make me feel good. Let me know how proud he was of me. Then he asked in a soft voice, When did you find out about this? When I told him, he bellowed as only a former Marine can. When he calmed down, he said, This sucks. It really sucks. Then, in a calmer tone, he said, I know what it's like when life kicks you in the balls. Words can't help it, but I'm here for you. He paused for a long moment, then added, Son, there's nothing I can do to make things better. But if you want to go out and kick your heels, I'll either watch the girls or join you and put it on my tab. Thank you, Captain. If you can refrain from talking about her, I can't think of who I'd rather go out with tonight. I did go out with the captain, but I think it was the most dreary week of my life. It was 2 years after the divorce. I was in New York again for a professional triumph. At this year's banquet, my number of Frank Lloyd Wright prizes increased to 4. Last year I won on one house, and this year I won on another house, an unprecedented threefold repeat. The 4th prize I won was for a commercial building I designed for the city of Midland. The architectural world went crazy over it. I also became the first person to win in 2 different categories in the same year in the history of the award. So why was I sitting at a table without a single friend, alone among complete strangers? Why did I feel more alone than I had ever felt in my life? Why was I lonely? It wasn't that people weren't contacting me. I had to get a home phone without a number because potential clients from all over the world were calling at all hours of the day and night. I was away from home more than I realized, but at least when I was home, I was home. I built an office close to home and only drove downtown in case of a serious threat. When I was home, I never worked until the girls were in school. Except for the month they were at Judy's, our summers were one long tour. Of course, part of it was visiting potential construction sites, but the girls loved seeing where my next project might be built. Besides, most of our time was spent exploring the neighborhood. I never wanted my project to be out of harmony with the local environment. Why was I lonely? It wasn't the lack of attention from the fairer sex. I didn't date, but I got calls from women all over the world asking if I could meet them. It seems the story of my broken heart in what was to be my greatest triumph was picked up nationally, and the world was full of women with big hearts who wanted to help fix it. It didn't hurt that I was making money faster than the mint could print it. Unfortunately, I didn't like myself, not even a little. I couldn't like, much less fall in love with someone else until I did. I couldn't overcome my problems. I just couldn't think of women who wanted someone like me. Instead of blaming myself, I tried to blame it on trust. I told myself that I just couldn't trust, and until I achieved that, I wasn't going to bring anyone into the house that the twins could get attached to. Honestly, divorce sucks. As a supposedly adult, I found nothing fun about it, but as a parent, it broke my heart to see what it was doing to my beautiful girls. They never said a word about their mother, but were constantly making snarky comments about their stepfather and his children. They never mentioned anything more than fights with their step-siblings, but I knew it must be hard on them. I agonized over how hostile this family could be to them. Next chapter. I was back from New York red-eyed and sitting in my chair trying to recover from the trip when the phone rang. The captain didn't waste words. "Son, that son of a bitch put her in the hospital this time. Now he's put her in the hospital. You have to get her out of there before he destroys her. Even if you don't want to do it for Judy, think of the twins." I felt a panic attack. Where are the girls? Relax, they're fine. They spent the night at their girlfriend Laura's house, and I called your parents to pick them up. Your folks went on one of their trips with them. They'll bring them back to you Sunday night. I breathed a sigh of relief. Why don't you come over and we can talk about it? This is the first time I've heard that he treated her badly. Why does she let it happen? You know why? Don't pretend with me. No, we did everything we could to push her into this marriage. If she didn't know then that you wanted to give her a taste of her own medicine, it didn't take her long to realize it. She feels so guilty for what she did that she would agree to anything. I gritted my teeth. I could fool myself, but I couldn't fool the captain. I didn't think it would go this far. You knew he was a bastard. What do you think he'll do when he finds out you're responsible for his dismissal and charges? I swallowed hard. Come on over, Captain, and we'll straighten things out, I promise. There was a long silence, and then the captain's voice became resolute. This shit has to stop. No one can do this to my child. Judy made me promise not to do anything rash last time. I may be stuck in this chair, but this shit has got to stop. Of course, Captain, I'm sorry. For your sake. I really never thought it would come to this. I'll be there in about an hour and a half. I'll stop by the hospital and try to convince Judy to. Damn him! Damn him! He hung up, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The last word was not a swear word, but a sincere curse. The captain was in his 60s and not in the best of health, but he was never a man to stand by when innocents were attacked. While I waited, I thought about my final revenge. After my divorce, I spent days, if not weeks, trying to think of ways to get back at Capote. I just couldn't think of anything that wouldn't hurt me even more than it hurt him. I was in pretty good shape, but even though he was almost 20 years older, his weight was close to his weight when he played halfback at Tech. I might be able to strike stealthily, but even if he didn't press charges, I wasn't sure I could overpower him in a fight unless I was willing to spend years learning something like karate, as if I had time for that. I checked Texas law and couldn't file a lawsuit for alienation of affection. For over a year and a half, the lack of revenge was like a big thorn in my side that I couldn't get out. Then, I received a gift of fate. The CEO of Capote's company accidentally ran into me at a charity event. The event was in the Midlands, for heaven's sake, and the man lived in New York City. Somehow, he had learned that I had won the FLW Community Building Award that year and wanted me to design a large office building for them in Midland. I set up an appointment, showed him a computer image of the project I had been working on for years. Then I told him the truth. If it had been any other company in the world, I would have gladly agreed to build the dream I had been working on since I was a kid. But for his company, it was unaffordable. Of course, in a company that size, he had never heard of Capote, much less my ex-wife. When I insisted that I wouldn't work for a company that allowed this kind of behavior, he didn't take it well. A few weeks later, Capote was fired. The CEO called me to thank me. He said that Capote had been accused half a dozen times in his 15 years with the company. He told me that the last 2 cases had been reinvestigated, a new accusation found, and grounds for his termination created. A week later, we signed a contract. As I said, professionally, I was on top of the world. But after the captain's call, I was terrified that my personal life was about to hit a new low. When the captain arrived more than an hour late, he just rolled in and didn't explain the reason for the delay. Without waiting for me to offer coffee or anything else, he began. Jesus, son, she's perfectly fine. She'll be in the hospital for at least a week. Hell, they only kept me in for 3 days when I had a double bypass. He was shaking, and I couldn't help but notice that he stopped just where he'd been paralyzed. It added to the pathos. He was silent for about 90 seconds and was still out of control when he continued. I can't let this happen. I supported everything you did to her because I thought she deserved it. But she doesn't deserve it, and you have to put a stop to it. How can I put an end to it, Captain? She is not my wife. I have no power to do anything about it. All she has to do is divorce him or press charges. And there was an authority in the captain's voice that I had never seen before. I suddenly realized how one of his junior officers must have felt when they screwed up on his ship. Don't try that nonsense with me. I was there. I helped you. Hell, you knew what you were doing and you did it. You wanted her to know what it's like when the person you love cheats on you, and you did everything you could to make sure she did. I love you, but you're the cold-eyed bastard I've never met. You'd make a good fighter bomber pilot. You attack with a plan, but no emotion. You knew what you wanted to do to Judy, and you did it. But for God's sake, tell me you didn't intend to do it. I was a nanosecond away from a heated denial, but the look in his eyes froze my words. I hung my head. Yes, Captain, I knew what I was doing. I knew that any man who cheats the way he does will not stop cheating. Once cheated on, always cheated on. I lifted my head and met his eyes. They weren't hard or even angry like I'd expected, but there was a hint of compassion in them. I swallowed hard and continued. I didn't think she'd stay with him. Midland is a small town in many ways. I made sure she knew about his cheating, and I thought she would divorce him. He interrupted me. You were going to get her back? No, Captain. I loved Judy, but I couldn't live with a man who didn't love me or choose someone else. I could forgive her cheating, but not the fact that she fell in love with someone else. I know I pushed all her buttons to get her to marry him. I used the girls, thought I was using you, and used her own morals to push her into a marriage I was sure wouldn't last 6 months. I wanted to hurt her, but I stopped, wanting to say I didn't mean to hurt her like that, but I wasn't sure I meant it. I felt sorry for the captain, but damn it, she made her bed, and I was more than happy that it was made of nails. I tried to get her to leave him when I saw her at the hospital, but she wouldn't. The only person who can make her leave is you. You sentenced her to this, and you're the only one who can fix it. Isn't it time you showed her some mercy? The captain was quiet for a moment. To be honest, it didn't turn out the way I thought it would. I had hoped that after she learned her lesson, repented, and came crawling back on her hands and knees, you would take her back. I've never seen anyone as devoted to her as you are. I still think that if she leaves him, you'll take her back. But I don't understand why you think she has stopped loving you? I asked her that night and she said, I loved you. Not I love you. She used the past tense, and that's when I realized there was no hope. It was a lame answer to his question, but it was the best I could do. The captain exploded. That's it! That's all you had? Tension from one word. The captain pulled himself together and looked at me intently. No, you knew better. It's about damn time you found out what it did to her. He shouted, then stopped. After a few seconds, he seemed to pull himself together. He made one of those 180-degree turns that reminded me of a motorcycle doing a cartwheel and rushed to my front door. Wait here, I need to get something from the car. He then made another 180-degree turn, turned to face me, and in a commanding voice I hadn't heard before, ordered, No, you do it. In the passenger seat of my car, you'll find a brown paper grocery bag, and in it are some books. Bring them here. I don't usually respond well to perfunctory orders, but here I got them. When I handed him the bag, he told me to put it on the table. Did you know Judy kept a diary? When I shook my head, he continued. I didn't know either, but she did. When I got to the hospital, I pounced on her demanding a divorce, but she wouldn't listen. He demanded that she hand over her old ones, but she refused. You could see blindly that my child was afraid of what he would do if he found them. When I offered to take them for safekeeping, she immediately agreed. She made me promise not to read them before she told me where they were hidden. I also promised I wouldn't let the guy I took with me read them. He looked down at his chair. I couldn't get to her hiding place. She hid them in the attic under insulation, so I took a friend with me. I asked her to write me a note giving me permission to get them. I took my friend's son, a policeman, and we went there. He was in his uniform, and Capote gave us no trouble. The place was a disaster area. Kyle climbed into the attic, and when he came down, he pulled out her last journal. She had cut the center out of a cookbook. Capote kept glaring at us, but it was all a fearless coward could do. I haven't read them, and I know Kyle hasn't. I did not promise not to give them to you, and you did not promise not to read them. He paused and gave me another penetrating look. Look, son, and I couldn't love you more if you were my flesh and blood. Judy's got plenty of faults, but she's not a liar. He paused again, and my face must have given away my thoughts because he continued. Not telling you about her affair is a kind of lie, but we both know that if you had asked her directly, she would have told you. Nevertheless, what is written in those diaries is her talking to herself. It would be the plain truth. You know that. I want you to read them. Find out why she did what she did. You and I both know it wasn't because she fell in love with that chump. He paused and rubbed his chin. I can't make you forgive her, but they say that to understand everything is to forgive everything. Maybe if you find out more. And if you can't forgive, maybe. For God's sake, you can have mercy on her. Please. The captain left, and I sat looking at the bag of journals, but my thoughts were not occupied with them. I was still thinking about the captain's last words. He had said mercy twice. He had said Judy was in my power. I didn't like the thought, but I wasn't sure I understood it. I went to the computer, called up the American Heritage Dictionary, and checked the definition of the word mercy. It listed 4 meanings, starting with the most common. 1. A compassionate attitude, especially toward those under one's power. Mercy. 2. A disposition toward kindness and forgiveness. A heart full of mercy. 3. Something to be thankful for. A blessing. It was a mercy that no one was hurt. 4. Relief of distress. Help. Distributing food to the homeless was an act of mercy. I slammed the book shut with anger and tried to rationalize what I had done to Judy. I'd just given her what she wanted. I had just helped her make the moral choice to marry this man. But I couldn't even finish that thought. Yes, it was her choice, and she was responsible, but I pushed her. Moreover, I knew I had power over her. Even through the divorce process, I knew she wanted to do whatever she could to make up for the pain she caused me, and I took shameless advantage of that. I was definitely not disposed to kindness and forgiveness. I thought about it for a moment. It was true, but who did I still want to punish? Judy or Capote? I had ruined his career. No one would take a man to any executive job if there was a 15-year gap in his record. And if he lists his last job, any background check will show why he was fired. Who would take that risk? Right now, he worked at a convenience store, and he was lucky. It's not easy to come down from a 6-figure salary. Still, I realized I didn't think the accounting was balanced. I wanted it destroyed in the robbery. In a burst of insight, I realized that in my mind the books would never balance as long as he had Judy. I may not need her, but he certainly didn't deserve her, and that's before he even started hitting her. I didn't think the 3rd definition of mercy applied in this case, but what about the 4th? Was I inclined to ease Judy's pain? I didn't think so, but that realization didn't make me think too highly of myself. Moreover, it made me feel a little ashamed. I tried to remember everything I could about mercy and remembered the phrase, "Don't strain yourself in mercy." I had no idea what it meant or where it came from, so I Googled it. Here's what I found. Origin. From Shakespeare's play, The Merchant of Venice. Portion. Mercy does not strain itself. It drips like gentle rain from heaven. On the place beneath, it is twice blessed. It blesses the one who gives and the one who takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the monarch on the throne better than his crown. It is an attribute of God himself. And earthly power is then like God's. When mercy triumphs over justice. I wasn't relieved. I was still busy. It was a little after noon, but according to my watch, it was the middle of the night. It was hot inside, and the air outside was boiling, as if one would expect anything else in the Midlands in late July. I went to my room, stretched out on my bed, and drifted into sleep. I had little interest in what I was being shown. When I awoke, it was 4:30 in the morning. I found myself muttering the phrase, "To understand all is to forgive all." In the heavy pre-dawn darkness, I wondered if this cliché was true. If I understand, will I forgive? And what would that forgiveness look like? I swore I wouldn't look at her diaries, but now I wanted answers. Initially, I just wanted to read what she might have written about the affair. The problem was that she almost never gave the year and only occasionally the month. Instead, she specified the day of the week. It was immediately clear that she was not writing for someone else, but for herself. It was her way of trying to make sense of the events of her life. Once I started reading, I couldn't stop. It was the essence of the woman I loved more than I thought a man could love a woman. I could hate what she did. I hated what she had done, but it was the soul of a being I was willing to fight 100 dragons to protect. I chose one of the books, opened it, and began to read. It had come to pass. The cavalry didn't come from over the hill. The good guys didn't show up on time. Matt hadn't stopped the wedding. As I stood at the altar, my daughters crying in their little bridesmaid dresses, the words, "Does anyone here have a single reason?" And Matt didn't rush into the church and save me. I said those words, and this time I won't break them. What a stupid fantasy. Until this morning, I didn't even realize I was hoping for salvation. So why would anyone else? Now I'm really screwed, in every sense of the word. I think it started to dawn on me around dawn. Now James is playing golf, and what man plays golf alone on his honeymoon? I swear I'll never do that again. Oh, Matt, why did you make me marry him? But I know that, don't I? I saw your face that Friday night, and a big part of me died. And yet I kept hoping, praying that you would change your mind about this marriage I was now doomed to. Would it make a difference if I could explain it to you? But how could I explain what I don't understand? How could I resist all his not-so-subtle hints that my job depended on making him happy, and then meekly obey when he ordered me to have a drink in his condominium? Why was I trying so hard to hide what was going on from Matt? He would put an end to it. He would save me. But for the past month, I wasn't sure I wanted to be saved. Was I really starting to love James, or was I convincing myself of that to justify what I was doing to the man I loved? Well, if I ever thought I loved him, he had managed to kill that over the past 2 months by constantly bragging about how he had won me back from a younger man. Showing me off like a stupid trophy? Oh my God, that's who I am. I'm his 28-year-old trophy wife. His way of feeling young when he's 50. Oh my God, what have I done? Who's going to save me now? As I continued to read, several things gradually became clear. First, Judy was a submissive person. She was not submissive, but was very much inclined to bend to her will whoever she felt had authority over her. She saw Capote in that capacity, and he seemed to have figured out how to take advantage of her. Second, I had no idea how deep the pain of not having other children was for her. She was afraid I was just using my business as an excuse. She was afraid that I had finally given up when we stopped fertility treatments. She was crushed and hurt. I didn't realize how important it was to her. I think her depression made her even more susceptible to a user like Capote. It didn't make her any less responsible for her affair. She still made a choice in favor of Capote. It is clear from her diary that she knew what she was risking when she undressed and spread her legs in front of him. She was guilty as sin, and she knew it. I don't think she ever figured out why she was doing it, but she rarely made an entry in which she didn't lament her weakness. There were other surprises, too. She guessed that I was trying to punish her by forcing her to marry Capote the first time she caught him cheating. She thought about it and decided she deserved to be punished. Instead of complaining, she talked about the pain for several pages. Not about her own, but about how she hurt me. After the first time, she didn't write much about it. She didn't like it. She was worried he might bring home an unwanted social disease, but she didn't care who he slept with. Then I found the part where her story got ugly. My heart broke when I saw the simple words she used to describe his abuse. Put too much sugar in my coffee. Hard punch to the stomach. I bruised my hip when I fell to the floor. This happened within 3 months of their wedding. She never paid much attention to it, accepting his beating as a just reward for what she had done to me. What broke her heart, though, was every time she thought I might have slept with someone. She went on for several pages about the first time she was convinced I had an amusement with another woman. My last love affair, combined with beatings and pressure from Capote, drove her to suicide. The pressure from Capote was twofold. He wanted her to go to a fertility clinic. His parents were willing to pay the cost. She used all sorts of excuses, but the fact remained that she didn't want his child. When I closed the last journal, I was exhausted, went back to bed, and fell asleep. One of the nice things about owning your own design company is that you can be as eccentric about your work schedule as you want. I had standing orders that no one would call my house for anything other than a collapsed design. No one called for the next 2 days while I pondered. By the end of that time, I was still undecided. James Capote was in a lot of pain. He just didn't know it. I didn't know how I would get rid of him. The only question was whether he would survive the experience. I seriously considered contacting some of the people I knew who fished on construction sites. I wouldn't let them on any of my construction sites, but even gangsters liked nice houses. My fee for designing a house was now in the 7 figures, and it was very lucrative considering how much some of them sold for. Bad robbery. Still, Capote was a problem that could wait. What couldn't wait, though, was Judy. She was due out of the hospital in a few days, and while I didn't know what I wanted from her or for her, I knew I didn't want her back in their home. Even if I didn't care for her, the thought of twins in the same house as Capote horrified me. At least that's what I tried to tell myself. But every time I thought about taking action, Judy's image came to mind. Arguments ran through my head again and again. For every reason I could spare him, I could find an equally good reason why I shouldn't. As they swirled around in my head, I switched to the news on the TV to unwind. The announcer was talking about another atrocity committed by someone in the Middle East. I gritted my teeth and hung my head. On the third morning, early in the morning, full of determination, but still not realizing exactly what I had decided, I set off for the hospital. When I got to her room, she was still asleep. I stood next to her bed and gazed into her face. It looked scary. Her eyes flew open, and for a second she smiled at me. Then, realizing where she was, she let out a thin shriek and covered her head with the sheet. "Judy, we have to talk. I've seen it all, and we're both going to feel like we're in a bad movie if we try to talk through this sheet." She let out something between a giggle and a snort, but lowered the sheet. Although she was smiling, the smile didn't extend to her eyes. "Dad told me he gave you my journals. He had no right to do that, and I'm sorry he did." I got really angry, but then I realized I never meant to hide anything from you. If you had asked, I would have given them to you. I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but I'd appreciate it if you put them away before you let the girls read them. I grinned. "I would never let them see what you think of our years of knowing each other." I looked into her eyes, and they were so wide open, I felt like I was looking into her soul. It was her whole soul. No person should ever be as vulnerable as she was. In a very soft voice, she almost whispered, "I wish I could tell you why I did it. But I didn't want to. I really didn't want to, but I did. I don't blame you for divorcing me or forcing me to marry James. It's what I deserved, but I want you to know that I would still do anything to make it less painful for you." She paused to blow her nose, which turned into a snort, assumed a dejected look, and continued. "I can't even say I didn't know how much it would hurt you when you caught me. I thought it would happen right after the first time. When it kept happening, I didn't know what to think. I never loved you less, but I guess I wanted you to save me. And as strange as it sounds, I was upset that you didn't. I was always surprised that you didn't suspect anything until that night." I gritted my teeth. "No, I didn't. My trust in you was absolute. If you had told me the sun rose in the west, I would have called the McDonald Observatory in the Davis Mountains and asked why, and then argued with them if they tried to deny it." She took a deep breath, held it, and then exhaled slowly. "I've never been on such a pedestal. I could live like—" She paused, as she usually did, and changed the subject. "Where do we go next?" I half smiled. She knew the effect these sudden changes in the course of a conversation had on me. I liked the quickness of her mind, but I hated having to follow her around. "First of all, you're not going back to his house. Never. That's final." And then she tilted her head and gave me the kind of expression a teacher might give a particularly slow learner. "That's not an option. I married him. For better or worse, it's just that the worst turned out to be a lot more than I planned." I felt myself starting to lose my temper. "Judy, that's not an option. Just imagine me riding in on a white horse and coming to rescue you. I'm telling you that you are not coming back." I saw mild confusion for the first time. "You read that in my journal, didn't you? I swore I would never break my marriage vows again. You should know that too." "He broke every marriage vow. He cheated on you. He didn't love and cherish you. He ruined this marriage, not you. You are not bound to him." She blinked a few times, and I could see the indecision. "If you go back to him, I'll never let you see the girls again. I can't risk him hurting them too." She broke down and put her head in her hands and cried. I sat down on the bed and put my arms around her. When she realized what I was doing, she pulled me against her and wet my shirt. Crying out, she asked, "Where will I go? What will I do?" "I will help you and make sure he can't hurt you. I'll have my lawyer prepare the divorce papers and the restraining order. If I bring them to you this afternoon, will you sign them?" Without raising her eyes, Judy nodded at my chest. After lunch, my lawyer and his 2 secretaries came to Judy's room. He had her sign and his secretaries certified the papers. When everything was ready, he left to file the papers before the court closed, leaving me alone with Judy. She took my hand and pressed it to her cheek, still wet with tears. Then, flashing her eyes, she asked, "When this is over, will you take me back?" It was the question I had been dreading so much. I recalled the epiphany that had visited me as I listened to the news on television. War was inherently cruel and inhumane. But unless it was a war in which no prisoners were taken, in which every man, woman, and child of the enemy was destroyed, you had to leave room for peace. Without mercy, you were getting wars that lasted for thousands of years. You had to show mercy to your enemy. Otherwise, you became just a savage. Mercy did not mean surrender. It meant that you kept some of your humanity and allowed your enemy to keep his. Now was the time to show mercy to Judy. I did what I could. 5 years later, I was sitting in the waiting room on the maternity floor. Judy was being transferred from the labor room to the delivery room where another pair of twins were being born, boys this time. I was sitting next to a nervous first-time father, and we were talking when the nurse announced that Judy was ready. Mark stood up, shook my hand, and said, "I appreciate you coming. It's going to be a tough couple months, isn't it?" I smiled. "Yes, and the girls are going crazy. I'll try to keep them in my house as much as possible, but I'll have my hands full too." He nodded nervously and left to join Judy in labor. Mark is a good guy, a major in the Army Reserves and a captain in the Midland Fire Department. He earned, didn't get, a Silver Star in Afghanistan and a second Purple Heart in Iraq. I admire him for that. He was a good match for Judy, and I was glad they found each other. What about me? How did I answer the question Judy asked me 5 years ago? I did my best to show mercy. "No, Judy, I won't." Her face lowered, and the tears flowed again. When she finally came to her senses, she managed to meet my gaze and asked, "Why?" I really wanted to answer, "Because I want a wife I can put on a pedestal, not one I have to keep on a short leash to be faithful." But I didn't, and Shakespeare's gentle rain from heaven came down and drowned my rage. Okay, I said it, but I tried to say it mercifully. I said, "I understand us better now than I did when we were married. We're just not right for each other. That doesn't mean either one of us is a bad person, but you need someone to guide you, and that's not me. I'm too self-centered. There will always be a special place in my heart for the woman who gave me twins. No, that's not true either. You'll always be my first love, but we're just not right for each other. We both made the wrong choice, but together as friends, maybe we can help each other make it better." Mark approached Judy. He didn't have her on a leash, more like the harness the climbing team uses. They matched, and Judy, securely held on the leash, blossomed in a way she never had when we were married. Mark and Judy lived in the same school as me. The twins could ride their bikes back and forth between our houses. We didn't socialize, but we were very supportive of each other. If we disagreed on something, we would ask the captain for help, and the girls never knew about our differences. The twins complained with mocking bitterness that they were cursed by too many parents. But despite all their complaints, they loved Mark, and he loved them. They were thrilled to have new brothers. Lots of new brothers. You see, I wasn't at the hospital to support either Mark or Judy. We weren't that close. It was one of those strange tricks that life plays on you. I was there to see my wife and our new twin boys who were born the day before. Happily? Perhaps mercy doesn't mean you should let another escape the consequences, just that they should be less than they deserve. That meant I didn't need to punish Judy as much as I could. Taking Judy back would not be mercy, but something else. I met my wife through a friend of Judy's, and we were everyone's dream couple. I hold her on a special pedestal, and she keeps my exorbitant ego in check. She loves my girls, and they love her. If Judy hadn't cheated, we'd still be married. It would have been better for the twins, but not for me. Maybe we got married too soon. Perhaps we saw each other as acceptable partners and didn't expect perfection. Perhaps we didn't have time to grow up and both changed as we matured. All I know for sure is that I was never and could never be as happy with Judy as I was with my wife. Showing mercy to Capote proved more difficult. I came close, but in the end, I decided that working for almost minimum wage for a man like him was enough. He was broken. I didn't need to break his body too. Okay, the jail time I secured for him for the assault might have been a factor too. However, I had a reason to contact him about a year ago. A very stupid woman, despite being warned, just opened her heart to this good man. I will never understand why some people are so stupid. When I found out about his wedding, my heart was so full of mercy for this stupid woman that I disengaged from the client. It happened that a cousin of a friend of my client's friend was in the high-risk personal loan business. When the cousin learned of the situation, he was so imbued with the milk of human kindness that he sent one of his business associates to see Capote and gently explained to him that good boys don't hit girls. I hear the lesson didn't have to be repeated. It's good to have friends at a low level. Yes, I'll be the first to admit that I still have a lot to learn and a long way to go before someone considers me merciful. But here's the thing about failing to show mercy. It binds you to a person or issue. It also offends your better nature. I couldn't forgive myself for what I did to Judy, but when I showed her mercy, I was able to show it to myself as well. It broke the steel shell I had built around my heart and opened it up to the possibility of a happy future. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.